Forward, march!
County Council, my sincere thanks to all of our brave military, firefighters, police officers, and first responders for your dedication and for your self-sacrifice. As we reflect on the 20th anniversary of September 11th, we pause to remember how precious life is and how precious our freedom is. Too often we take both for granted and don't really appreciate them until they're threatened. Today, as we remember those we lost, let us also pause and be grateful for our lives, for our safety, and for our freedom. I'd like to turn the mic over to Congresswoman Scanlan, who's going to now offer some remarks. Congresswoman?
Good morning, everyone. I'm so grateful to the county and to District Attorney Stolzheimer for organizing this annual event and providing us with an opportunity to spend time together as a community and to honor our first responders on the eve of September 11th. 20 years later, it still feels like yesterday. It's hard to realize that this life-altering event that is so present for me and for so many of you here today isn't even a memory for an entire generation. It's something they learn about in history books. But that's part of why we're here. We have an obligation to ensure that our younger generations not only know what happened on September 11th, 2001, but that they truly understand the scale of the loss we endured and how those events have impacted the trajectory of our nation. So I'm honored to share some thoughts on this remembrance ceremony on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Remembrance takes many forms. It's complicated. It can be as personal as a prayer or as public as a memorial or a service like this. We remember collectively and publicly to honor those who are gone. We remember privately or reflect to grieve and make sense of these events. And we remember to heal, to move forward with renewed purpose and create a better world for those who follow. First, we honor those who are gone because the living owe it to those who no longer can speak to tell their story for them. In the days after September 11th, I felt compelled to follow every piece of breaking news, no matter how heartbreaking. As the search and rescue operations turned into recovery efforts, I collected a stack of newspapers and magazines about that day. And what sticks with me is the faces of the first responders. The images of the brave men and women who ran into danger that day were so powerful. And what made them so powerful was that these people were not superheroes. They reflected the faces of the hometown heroes everywhere, of the people who are joining us here today. They reflected the faces of my family and neighbors and yours, the firefighters, the police officers, EMTs, and veterans who each and every day put on their uniforms and prepare for the unknown to keep us safe, protecting us from dangers we'll never know were even lurking. And they swoop in to provide care when we aren't as lucky. We will never have enough words to say properly how to honor their service. So I simply say now, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your selfless service. You are all our heroes. We also remember to grieve and to make sense of events. I kept all those newspapers and magazines that I collected, and eventually books about 9/11. I take them out sometimes, usually around this time of year. It brings back the helplessness and the horror that we felt as that day unfolded. Living here in the center of the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, it felt as if we were surrounded by evil. But while we will see those images of smoke and fear replayed endlessly on this anniversary, what I always remember is how blue the sky was. That entire week, it was just so blue, like it is today. And it was so quiet because there was no air travel all over the country. And of course, we're close enough to the Philadelphia airport that we hear that air travel frequently. But it was so beautiful in the weather and it was so quiet. And that was a calming influence. It allowed me the space to help cope with the devastation that we all witnessed, and it reaffirmed the power of nature and God's creation of the universe as a contrast to the evil that we'd all seen. And finally, we remember to heal. to move forward with renewed purpose and to create a better world. Eventually, on the first anniversary of 9/11, I put my box of newspapers away. It was too painful to see every day, and I needed to direct my energy to moving forward. But I keep it to take out and reflect because it's important to remember. When I unpack that box and I think back now to that day 20 years ago, I always am consoled by how our community and our nation came together in the face of tragedy. As the events of the day unfolded, friends, relatives, and neighbors checked in from all over the world to ask each other, "Are you okay? What can I do to help?" That evening in our community, we attended interfaith services that had been hastily arranged by our community leaders. I will always cherish the way our community and our nation came together to support each other and those who lost loved ones in that attack, the outpouring of volunteers and supplies for those in need, and the support for Americans of different faiths who were targeted by bigots in the aftermath. We truly were the United States of America in the days, weeks, and months that followed. As I reflect on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, I know that the trauma, the loss of innocence we experienced as a nation changed us in ways big and small. But what I hope for all of us today is that in this moment of collective mourning and reflection, we remember that America is at its best and at its strongest when we come together in support of each other, as we do today at this ceremony of remembrance and thanksgiving for not just the first responders we lost on 9/11, but all those who selflessly serve our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And I just want to echo everything that Brian and Mary Gay just said. And if you don't mind indulging me for just a minute, I want to share just my two remembrances of that event, a tragic event 20 years ago that come top of mind to me. First is, as Brian said, we all remember, people of my generation, where we were when this happened. I was actually a young assistant district attorney here in Delaware County, about to leave the office to go into federal service to work on the new president's gun violence initiative. So I was actually at a hotel room on City Line Avenue with a bunch of federal agents being trained on how to do gun violence prevention, when all of a sudden, shortly before 9 o'clock, all of their pagers and phones went off, and they left the room. I was the only one left there by myself. And what I came to realize was, the enemy had attacked our country, but they hadn't attacked our military facilities. They attacked our civil society itself. And so the people who were on the front lines at the very beginning weren't our warriors, they were our guardians, our firefighters, our EMTs, our police officers, who gave their lives willingly that day, and many of whom are willing to do that every day for the people of this county and this country. And if you don't mind, joining me in a round of applause for the police officers, the firemen, and the EMTs who have joined us here today. They deserve our admiration every single day. And as Mary Gay said, my second remembrance of that day was the unity that this country somehow came to find because of this tragic and horrific event. If you remember, those of you who are old enough, 2001, the attacks happened 9 months after a presidential election that a lot of people in this country thought somebody had stolen. Sounds vaguely familiar to what we hear today. Our country seemed politically divided between left and right. There seemed to be no way to get the political system to work for the good of everyone. And then 9/11 happened. And for a moment at least, everybody in this country remembered we're all really Americans. We all believe in the same things, freedom and tolerance. We have much more that unites us than divides us. And if we can just keep that spirit alive, we can remember the words that Robert Kennedy said so long ago, which is that we are all in this world really brothers, each of us sharing the same short moment of life. All of us just seeking to live out their lives, gaining whatever happiness and satisfaction we can. We pitched in 20 years ago, and today, I'm sad to say, we are now more divided probably than we've ever been in this country, at least in the last 50 years. But 9/11 taught us it doesn't have to be that way. We can make a difference right here in Delaware County. Let's be the change. Let's always remember that we have more in common than we have that divides us. Let us always work towards independence, freedom, and tolerance for everyone who lives with us in our society. And I think if we do that, and I think if Delaware County takes the lead in changing this Commonwealth and this country, I think we will properly honor those people who gave their lives 20 years ago so that we could all live today in freedom. I want to thank you for listening to me. I want to thank Mary Gay and Brian, and I want to thank all of you who are here today. And I think at this point, Brian or Tim, we're going to move on to laying some wreaths. But thank you for allowing me to share my remembrances with you.
Dr. Taylor, if you'll lead us. Right shoulder, arm. After the other memorial. Breathe in, arm. You're right up by the bell, thank you. National salute, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our county executive director and an Army veteran, West Point graduate, Howard Lazarus. Howard, for a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming this morning to honor and preserve the memories of all who lost their lives, as it's been said, on a morning just like this one 20 years ago. I am not an elected official, but I am honored to speak in front of the group behind us at a time when many Americans lose faith in government, lose faith in our system. We are very fortunate to have this group of elected officials who work every day to make Delaware County a great place to live, better than it was yesterday, and aspire to be even better tomorrow. I want to speak to you, though, on behalf of all the dedicated public servants who are here at the local level and at the county level. It is our job to support all of those who protect us, who guard over us, and to keep us safe. Public service is a unique privilege and honor. It is staffed by people who know that life is about having purpose and meaning in what we do beyond just self-enrichment. It is about creating an environment of respect, and is one that seeks joy out of service to others. We can all remember where we were 20 years ago. The time, place, and people we were with are frozen in our memories. In many cases, they will be forever young in our minds, and they will be forever missing at our holiday dinner tables. A day like today, we had sent our children off to school. We were going over in our minds what we had to accomplish that day, and we were wondering, just like today, whether or not the Phillies could catch Atlanta. I was in our corporate offices when I was working for a company called the Shaw Group, and we were preparing for a presentation to officials in the Pentagon, and we were in Alexandria, Virginia that day. And a friend came in, and Neil said, "Howard, you need to come see this. A plane just crashed into the World Trade Center." And like Brian, I thought it was a small plane that had crashed in, because on occasion, when I worked in the area, we would go into buildings where small planes had accidents. But I was shocked to see that it was a commercial airliner that had been steered into one of the towers. And as we watched there with horror as the second plane struck World Trade Center, we also heard a plane fly overhead the office, which was headed for the Pentagon. My boss, Dan Melchior, his wife was in the Navy, and she was assigned to the Pentagon. And the horror and panic that came over to him, we tried to comfort, but in the end, you can't comfort someone who's going through a loss like that and the uncertainty. And the hours and days that followed, we all tried to reconnect with our families. Cell phone circuits, regular telephones were overloaded. It was hard to communicate to let our families know that we were safe as well. When I did get home, we were living in North Jersey at the time, and we dealt with the pain of dealing with colleagues who had lost their lives. I had once worked for a company that had its headquarters at 92 World Trade Center, and also worked with people who were at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, several of whom did not make it out. In the years that have followed, we've seen the health impacts to our first responders who showed up that day, and we need to make sure that we do not forget that their suffering still continues. We have sent our friends off to serve at places overseas, including the Middle East. I've had friends and classmates who either did not make it back or who were severely injured. And we've seen our lives complicated with security measures that we feel at times restrict our freedom, even though we know that they're for our own good. But we also know and have seen the resiliency that earmarks our society and our communities. And we know that we have the spirit to keep on building, keep on progressing to a better, more equitable, and more joyous future. And we see our lives and our futures grow closer and closer together. Those of us in public service, particularly our first responders, know how to compartmentalize. We know how to address the task at hand when we're faced with uncertainty and we're faced with a horror like we did on 9/11. Days like today are important because it gives us the opportunity and the space to unpack those feelings. Because but for days like this, those things tend to build up, and sometimes we hurt the people we love the most, who support us the most. So the day is not just to remember what happened, but it's also to honor, respect, and provide support to those who continue to serve us. We have certainly saw that on 9/11. We also see those impacts building today as we deal with the effects of a worldwide pandemic that is still with us. We rely on our elected officials to set the tone and example for all of us who are devoting our lives to the service of others. And we are very fortunate, as I said before, to have such great leaders and role models. But we do need to take the time and pause and feel out our emotions and make sure that we deal with them in a way that is constructive for us. As we look to the future, we often struggle with our place in the world as we look at world events. We wonder how it's going to affect our nation and our communities and how we live our lives. We should never lose that aspiration that we hold, though, to be better than we were, to be an example, and to be a role model, and to make sure all of those who live here in Delaware County have the opportunity to lead a better life and to join together to show the world what can be done when people of different backgrounds come together. I thank you all for coming out this morning, for all that you do, all that you have done, and all that you will do in the future to continue to make Delaware County the place that it is. So thank you.
At this time, I'd invite counsel and the district attorney to present a brief on behalf of the victims of September 11th and victims of violence in Delaware County.
I want to thank everybody for coming. We're going to have a closing benediction and retirement of the colors, but if you don't mind, I'm going to use just you can all sit, a little discretion to thank many of the police leadership who are here today. It's my humble opinion, just my opinion, that we have the best police forces here in Delaware County, in this entire region. I don't think any of these guys are going to disagree with me. But I see Chief Viola from Haverford Township. I saw Tim Bernhardt, the superintendent of the Upper Darby Police Department, who's here. I know Commissioner Gretzky is here from the city of Chester, who's doing a fabulous job. I know Joe Daly from Springfield is here, and our newest police chief in Brookhaven, is here as well, and our newest police captain at the Ridley Police Department, Jim Doherty. Jim, thanks for all you do. Thanks for all of you. I'm sorry, Bill, I almost forgot you. Bill Baer from Fulcroft PD is here. And I can never forget my own chief of county detectives, Jim Nolan, who's always lurking to make sure I don't make a mistake. And I want to thank our friends in the state police. I think Lieutenant Sunderland is also here. If I've missed anybody, I'm sorry. I just want to thank you all again for all you do. And at this time, I will call on Sheriff Sanders for our closing benediction.
I ask everyone to bow their heads, please. Heavenly Father, we are here on this beautiful morning to give honor to whom honor is due. Our local Delaware County Police, Fire, emergency responders that have given their lives over the years to protect the citizens of Delaware County. We promise to remember, Lord, their sacrifice. We also gather one day before the anniversary of a very painful day to remember, but impossible to forget. We remember all the heroes and heroines of September 11th, 2001, the firefighters and emergency responders who demonstrated such courage in the midst of crisis. We remember the innocents who perished, our friends and neighbors and thousands of strangers who were victims of random violence. We remember knowing for a moment that we were connected to each precious life, to the survivors and to those who died with a bond of shared humanity that the forces of hate could never break. We remember the voices that counseled peace even as our nation prepared for war. And we raise our voices still against fanaticism in all its forms, against jihad, against militarism, against racism and religious intolerance, praying that the conflagration of that day might even now cast a more gentle light, leading to a future where all people can live in freedom and without fear. We ask that you bless this prayer of remembrance, and we ask that you give us a greater tomorrow of unity. In Jesus' name, amen.
At this time, can we have a retirement of the colors? This time, on behalf of the county government, I wish you all well and make sure that God blesses the United States of America. Thank you.